So, you're sitting down to tackle a big assignment. Maybe it's history, maybe a tough science problem. And you feel that pull, right? That urge to check your phone or just stare at the window. It feels like a battlefield for your focus. And today, we're getting into the one tool so many of us use to try and win that battle: music. But first, let's just nail down what we're talking about: attention span. It's not just sitting in a chair, it's the total time you can lock your brain onto one thing without getting pulled away.
And this is where the data gets really interesting. For a typical 13-year-old, your brain might naturally start to check out after, say, 20 minutes, maybe even less. And look, that's not a flaw or anything, it's just brain development. But the really tough classes like math or writing a big essay, they require you to push way past that natural limit.
So it's a skill you have to build.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
And it takes a ton of mental energy, which means we have to be smart about where that energy goes.
Okay, so let's talk about that energy. The brain and the beat. How does this even work? Sound waves enter your ear, they become electrical signals, and they shoot back to your auditory cortex.
Right, that's the main hub for sound. But what's so wild about music is that it doesn't just stop there.
It goes everywhere.
Pretty much.
Yep.
It lights up all these different brain areas at once, the parts for emotion, for memory, even for movement. It's a full brain workout.
Wow. So decoding a song is way more work for your brain than, say, ignoring the hum of a fan.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of your brain's energy like a phone battery.
Mm.
A really complex song with changing rhythms and lyrics, that's like running a high-end video game. It drains the battery fast.
And that leaves less power for the actual schoolwork.
Exactly. Less energy left for that algebra problem.
That makes so much sense. So we know some background noise can be good, it can reduce stress. But what's the one type of music that just consistently tanks your focus?
It almost always comes down to one thing: lyrics. Yep. When you hear words, your brain's language centers they turn on automatically. They can't help it. So if you're trying to write an essay, your brain is trying to follow the song's story and your own thoughts at the same time.
It's like having two people talking in your ear at once. But what if it's a song I know by heart? I'm not even thinking about the words.
Doesn't matter. Your brain is. Those language centers are still tracking the lyrics, and that process collides directly with your own internal monologue.
My internal monologue.
Yeah, you know, that quiet voice you use in your head when you're reading or thinking through a problem. The song's lyrics will usually win that fight, and suddenly your thinking gets fuzzy.
Which is why the research always points to instrumental music. Things like classical or ambient tracks or, what was the other one? Movie scores.
Movie scores are a perfect example. They are literally designed to create a mood without ever stealing your attention. They're meant to be in the background.
And what about electronic music?
That can work really well, especially if it has a steady, repetitive beat. Predictability is key, because then your brain doesn't waste energy trying to figure out what's coming next.
So a good rule is just to avoid the human voice. But what about volume? I know people who blast music to drown everything else out.
That's a huge mistake. Remember that internal voice we just talked about? If the music is too loud, it literally shouts over it.
So you can't hear yourself think.
You literally can't hear yourself think. It makes it so much harder to hold complex ideas in your head. The music needs to be a cushion, not a wall of sound.
Okay, let's switch from lyrics to rhythm. Tempo, the speed of a song, that can change how you physically feel, right? Fast music gets your heart rate up.
For sure. And slow music can calm you down.
Yeah.
This is where we get into the idea of a study zone. Research points to an ideal tempo for learning. It's around 60 beats per minute.
60 BPM. That is incredibly specific. Why that number? It's not random. 60 BPM is really close to a calm, resting heartbeat. When the music matches that internal rhythm, it helps your brain settle into a really productive, focused state. It's steady. It's predictable.
But hold on, what if I have a huge assignment and I have zero motivation? Sometimes a really fast, high-energy song is the only thing that gets me started.
And that's totally fine for getting started. For simple, repetitive tasks like organizing notes, faster music can be great for a jolt of energy.
But not for the hard stuff.
Not for the deep thinking. For that critical, analytical work, that high-energy music just creates this restlessness. It works against the kind of calm focus you need. You want the music to just fade away.
I also know that music is it's an amazing tool for emotion. If I'm stressed about a test, something calming can really help. Absolutely. Emotional regulation is a huge benefit. When you're anxious, your brain kind of narrows its focus, which is terrible for creative problem solving. Calming music opens your brain back up, but you have to be careful. A song that's super sad or one that triggers a really strong memory, like from a vacation or something,
It's going to pull you right out of your work.
immediately. The goal is a neutral, positive emotional background. You're just trying to create the perfect internal climate for your brain to do its job.
For years there was this idea, the Mozart effect. The belief that listening to classical music could actually make you permanently smarter.
Ah, yes. One of the biggest myths in cognitive science, let's be really, really clear on this. The music did not and does not change your permanent intelligence or your IQ.
So what did that original study actually find?
All it found was that listening to that music put people in a better mood. They felt more alert, more awake, and because they were in a better mood, they did a little better on a test they took right after.
It was a temporary mood boost.
Cool. Exactly. A short walk or listening to any song you love could have a similar effect. It's a tool to optimize your state, not a shortcut to being a genius.
Okay, let's talk about something the research points to as a real danger. Multitasking. So many people think they're great at listening to music while studying.
Right. But your brain isn't actually doing two things at once. It can't.
So what is it doing?
It's switching. It's rapidly jumping back and forth. Task A, the music. Task B, the textbook. Back to A, back to B. And every single switch has a cost.
It's like closing a browser tab and opening a new one over and over.
A perfect analogy. And you lose a little bit of efficiency and focus every single time you switch.
Yeah.
You make more mistakes. You don't grasp the deeper concepts because you never stay with one thing long enough.
And what does that do long term if you're always doing it?
Over time, you can actually damage your natural ability to focus deeply. You're training your brain to need constant new stimulation. It makes it harder and harder to just sit down and concentrate on one thing.
So if music has to be instrumental, low volume, and exactly 60 BPM, maybe the best option is just no music. Let's talk about silence.
Silence is incredibly powerful. And for some tasks, it's definitely the best option, especially if you're learning something brand new or really, really complex,
Why is that?
because it removes all competition. It gives that internal voice we talked about, your thinking voice, the entire stage. There's no distraction, so you can really hear yourself work through the problem.
But I know for some people, total silence is distracting. Their mind just wanders everywhere.
That's true too. Some brains actually need a little bit of sensory input to stay anchored.
Yeah.
In a silent room, their mind goes looking for stimulation, and that's when you start thinking about, what's for dinner.
So for those people, a little bit of low-level, non-lyrical music acts as an anchor.
It's an anchor. It keeps the mind from drifting, and this is why, really, you have to become your own scientist.
You have to self-test.
Exactly. Try a study session in total silence. Then try one with some quiet instrumental music. Pay attention. See where you feel the most productive. That's the most valuable thing you can learn.
So if you do decide that music works for you, there's some really practical advice. Rule number 1, create your playlist before you start working. This is so important. You can't be stopping every 10 minutes to find a new song. That just kills your flow. The playlist should be at least an hour long.
And critically, it should be music you're already familiar with.
Why familiar?
Because if it's new, your brain has to work harder to process it. Familiar music is already logged in the system, so to speak. It can fade into the background much more easily. And some final tips. Avoid anything with a heavy, thumping bass or sudden changes in volume. Those things are designed to grab your attention. You want the opposite. Use the playlist as a ritual. When this music starts, it's time to work.
So to wrap all this up, the link between music and focus is complicated. Music can be a fantastic tool for your mood and your environment, but you have to be strategic. Generally, you want instrumental, steady, low-volume music.
And ultimately, you just have to pay attention to your own mind. Understanding what works for you is the single biggest step you can take to becoming a more effective student.
See you next time.